What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 374. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the couch from Dublin, Ireland, is Luis Scott-Vargas.
Well, technically, I'm on the bed.
Actually, yeah, you're right. You're actually on the bed, which is where you always are when we record the show on the road, which we do, well, about 4 times a year when we're covering the Pro Tour, which is exactly what's happening here. Luis and I, we are in Dublin. We're here for Pro Tour Aether Revolt. We're going to be doing coverage for us starting tomorrow. This is the night before. We had a work day today doing interviews and such, but always got to make time for the podcast. And we've got information. We've got insider information from Team ChannelFireball Fire, as well as Team Mutiny. They tested together, and we had a chance to stop by their testing squad and watch a good chunk of the limited meeting today. And of course, we've also been talking amongst ourselves on coverage and that kind of thing about what we feel about the format and what's been going on. So we've got all those type of updates for you on the show today. Before we get into all of that fine information, I want to mention our sponsor, ChannelFireball.com. Please do check them out. You can get everything you need Magic related from them, including Aether Revolt stuff. It's all up on the website now. You can get sealed products so you can do drafts. You can even, get it mixed in where you get some Kaladesh packs in there too, so that you have the right thing for the draft format. You could also do that for sealed as well. I've been playing a pretty significant amount of Heads Up Sealed with my friend Adam, which is really fun. If you've only got 2 people, doing sealed is pretty cool because the process is exactly the same as it would be if you were going to go play in a GP or playing a PPTQ when it comes to building the sealed pool. And sure, you only get to play against one person with it, but you can play multiple matches if you want. And I find that pretty useful in a good way too if you've just got 2 people to play, because it can be kind of tough to get 6 players together for a draft. And of course, you can find single sealed product, all that kind of stuff at Channel Fireball, as well as free content. Absolutely free. You show up and you're going to see videos, articles, and podcasts from some of the best players in the game, all helping you get better. Many of them are here in Dublin getting ready for the Pro Tour, but still they'll have, by the time the show goes up, you'll have even more stuff from them. So please do check out ChannelFireball.com. We thank them for being our sponsor. Of course, you can support the show directly if you'd like via the Patreon. That is a fantastic service, a website that allows you to support the things that make you happy. We put out the show for free. It's completely free for you. You never have to pay. It's completely optional. And we love doing it. But it sure is nice when people say, hey, I got a lot of enjoyment out of this. I'm going to check out this Patreon thing and see what they can get. They get something back too. You get to submit questions for the question of the week. You get entered into drawings, which I'll be resuming when I get home from this trip. It's a little bit tough when we're on the road to get stuff shipped and to figure out exactly what I have to give away. But I will be starting those up again once we get home, because the last 2 shows I was traveling. But anyway, patreon.com/limitedresources. And there's a little video there that'll explain how it works. And again, thank you so much to everybody who supports the show. We really appreciate it. It means a lot. Including Troy Navarro, who has our question of the week. Troy says, hey, Marshall and Luis, I'm a big fan. I've been listening since the times of Brian Wong. I have recently seen quite a few Twitter posts about the pile shuffling rule, and I strongly support it to avoid wasting time. However, during the last pre-release, I wondered if I was shuffling the best way possible. I just built my deck, and I had all my lands next to each other as well as all of my spells. I cut the deck in about half, mass shuffled it 10 or 13 times. During that time, I didn't draw 1 land, and I was curious how they ended up. When I looked, 13 of my 17 lands were all next to each other in the bottom 18 cards of my deck. I really wondered if that happened because of the way I was shuffling. He says, my question is, do you have any suggestions on the best way to shuffle, method, duration, etc., that best randomizes the card deck without potentially stacking it, especially right after you've built your deck when all the cards are organized together? Thanks. How do you shuffle?
I do 7 riffle shuffles, which is enough to fully randomize a deck of cards, and then I'm done.
That is actually the most. I've read an article, 2 different articles about it, and that is the most efficient way to do it.
Yep.
Is 7 riffle shuffles.
I don't pile shuffle because pile shuffling is just counting your deck. It's not shuffling. And I count my deck before each match just to make sure, but I don't do it by pile shuffle.
But you can do it quicker by just I was actually talking to somebody at the GP on the weekend who did the pile shuffle, and then I was joking with them. They were in the match next to mine, and it was in a side event, but they said, well, logically speaking, blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't help myself. And I just said something like, you're defending pile shuffling by logic? Like, this isn't going to work out well for you.
It really isn't that complicated.
Yeah. And I just showed them, look, I can count my deck quicker by just piling it up or holding it in my hand.
Yeah, I just do it by just holding my hand and thumbing through it 5 at a time. But yeah, I just riffle shuffle 7 times and then I present my deck.
Yeah. And like I said, having read a pretty extensive article about it, that is actually the number one. That is the way to do it. Is to riffle shuffle. Now, when you say riffle shuffle, I mean, I know how you shuffle. I've seen you shuffle a trillion times.
Separate your deck into 2 piles, grab both piles, use your thumbs to lift them up, and then let them drop as they intersperse.
Now,
that's not mass shuffling. It's
what about when you grab the deck in your hands and you pull it in half and then push them together?
Yeah, that's mass shuffling.
And do you not consider that as good as a riffle?
No.
Where do you draw the line, like on the mass shuffle thing?
You can do it.
Is it irrelevant to you?
You can do it if you want. I just think riffle shuffling is just the most efficient.
Okay. Yeah, and I have to say that, I mean, that is how I approach it as well, is that I'm trying to be as efficient as possible with that, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen a match go to time that just really shouldn't have gone to time.
You just don't need to spend 4 minutes shuffling.
Yeah.
It's boring.
It's really boring, yeah. Pile shuffling's not a thing. I think if you just took it out of your repertoire completely,
it's pile counting. Just call it pile counting.
Yeah.
It doesn't randomize your deck.
Right.
It's not counted as a method.
And judges have even recognized that fact by making the rule that Troy was referring to, which says that per game you get to pile shuffle once.
Yeah.
And that was really just to appease people that really are used to it and just be like, sure, you can have one. Like they don't want to be so heavy-handed that they're just like, if we see you pile shuffling, you're out of here or whatever. But it's a situation where it's like, at the end of the day, they recognize that they needed to minimize on that because it's so slow to do. So 7 riffle shuffles is the way to do it, and then have your opponent cut. Do you shuffle your opponent's
I shuffle my opponent's deck, yeah. I'll shuffle it a couple times.
Yeah. And what you'll see, too, Troy, is that there still will be, as you put it, like a land clump, a chunk
that's just
of
randomization.
Land. But that's how randomization works. There actually should be. It is a little weird to see 13 of your 17 lands, and I'd have to watch you shuffle to actually make sure that you were not doing something incorrectly. But I also appreciated that Troy mentioned without potentially stacking it. I've seen people at pre-releases
mana weave
right in front of me.
Yeah.
And I go, what are you doing there, dude? And they're like, oh, well, this way I can draw lands and spells. And I'm like, all right, sit down. Like, because obviously that person's not aware of what they're doing and the implications it can have on a game like Magic. But that is, tantamount to cheating. It's completely against the rules. So get the riffle shuffle going. Okay, let's do a crack a pack or two here, Luis. This one comes from Steve H., whom I met at GP San Jose. By the way, thank you everybody who came up and said hi. That was very nice of you, and it made my horrific day 1 performance feel a little bit less bad. I ended up going 5-4. I was not happy about it.
I know, you kept me updated on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. You asked for that. All right, first card out of the pack, Shock.
Shock is a fine first pick. Not excited about it, but it's just a good card.
All right. Now, I know you, and I know what you're going to say, but you want to lock it in? You want to throw away the rest of the pack?
No.
Not for Shock?
No.
Okay. How about a Shipwreck Moray?
I do not like Shipwreck Moray very much.
No, that card's not very good. All right, here's a good one, though. Caught in the Brights.
Caught in the Brights is decent. I like Shock more than Caught in the Brights.
You do.
Because it's more efficient. And there still are cards that punish these like pacifism arrest type effects. Caught in the Brights does let you exile a creature eventually, but when you don't have that and they have like an illusionist stratagem or something along those lines, it's just, you end up getting owned.
Precise Strike.
Worse than Shock.
Precisely not. Silkweaver Elite.
Not a card that I consider elite.
You got to work for it.
Yeah, the Revolt on this is just not worth the payoff.
No.
Just kind of like a hallmark of Revolt cards everywhere.
They're not very good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a little while. Fourth Bridge Prowler.
Fine playable, but not as good as Shock.
Yeah, I still try to bring this guy in out of the board, but I have noticed that there's a sharp uptick in 1 toughness creatures after Aether Revolt came out.
I think it's a solid main deck card.
Do you think so?
I just like 1 copy, not like a lot.
That seems like a stretch to me to call it solid. Like let's say
more
you
than
kill
half
a
the time?
2-drop with it, you're pretty happy. Like, that's really good. Anytime you don't kill something with it, it's just misery.
True.
I don't know.
It's a Revolt enabler. Just kill itself.
It can. Somebody emailed that to us. Ice Over. Where are we at on this? Is this a real removal spell?
It's playable. I have found it to be fine. I'm not impressed with it. It's worse than Shock or Caught in the Brights.
Would you play it on a Consulate Skygate?
I've seen that play be made. It's not a good play. Do not do that.
Verdant Automaton.
Filler at best.
Yes, not that great. Watchful Automaton?
Slightly better than filler, but still not great.
Yeah, they really did, like, and I get it, when you design cards like this, they're colorless, they don't want them to be too good, and they're all just on the other side of not quite good enough, as it usually
Welder
turns out.
Automaton is the one I like the most.
I like that one a lot, yeah. This one I really don't like, Aegis Automaton.
No, Aegis Automaton's quite poor.
Yeah, it's really bad. I have seen it be good in a late game scenario. Like most cards,
with
it does
10
have
mana
its
and play the
spot.
card's great, but just getting there is the problem.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that much. The 0-3 body's not a very good blocker in the format. Okay, that brings us to our uncommons. We've got Salvage Scuttler next. That's the 4 and a blue 4/4, and whenever it attacks, return an artifact you control to its owner's hand.
Yeah, that card is a playable, but it's not a card I'm excited about.
Yeah, I'm the same on that. Deadeye Harpooner.
I've been unimpressed with this card.
I thought it was going to be good.
It's just too many hoops.
I know.
You need Revolt. So this is the Revolt, kill a tapped creature an opponent controls, 2 and a white for a 2/2. You need to activate Revolt and have them have a tapped creature, and one you care about. And it's just all of those pieces together is just too much.
Yeah, I actually just think they missed on the design on this card. And I don't think they were too far off. I think what it feels like to me is that when R&D tested this card, that they thought it was better than it actually is.
It's possible.
Because
it's not a premium uncommon.
You know where I'm actually looking at all the little stats that they could have changed? I'm just looking at the power and toughness. Like, if you would have made this a 3/2, I would have been like, okay, fine. Like, I'm getting a, Herald of the Fair left over.
Well, I guess Vengeful Rebel is a 3/2, and it's got a similar Revolt trigger. It's just -3/-3.
Yeah.
And Vengeful Rebel is quite good because the trigger is better and it's a 3/2.
Yeah.
So do they think Deadeye Harpoonist had a better trigger?
Because it could kill anything, air quotes? I don't know.
Maybe.
It's interesting.
Maybe they just wanted it to be a weaker card, though.
Yeah.
There's no rule saying that those two cards
Absolutely.
Have to be
and I mean, I'm speculating heavily here. But it does just feel like the fact that you have to enable Revolt, which is already hard enough, and the fact that the creature needs to be tapped and you have to have your mana lined up to do it just makes Deadeye Harpooner a bit disappointing, I have to say.
Ooh, Thopter Arrest.
Yeah.
This is the first time you can just show me the card.
We've got, we've got some nice removal. We've got Shock, Caught in the Brights, and Thopter Arrest.
Thopter Arrest is significantly better because it kills any artifact or creature, and it exiles them so they can't unlock them later with any of the tricks I mentioned. So I'd be taking Thopter Arrest here.
There are some tricks they can unlock them later with, but
sure.
But I agree with you. I think it definitely is better than either of the two cards. Oh, upgrade.
Ooh,
we're jamming.
There's a free jam Regent.
Yeah. This is the 4/red 4/4 flying dragon that has kind of double fire breathing. You can pay 1 in a red to give it +2/+0 until in a turn, but I think just as importantly, it has improvise.
Yeah, card's great. It's often a 4-mana 4/4 flying fire breathing, so certainly would be jamming here.
Absolutely.
After free jam Regent, I would take Thopter Arrest, and after that, well, once I have 2 cards, I'll see what, who knows what the other...
Yeah. I like that pick a lot. Free Jam Regent is kind of the classic dragon.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? They've been printing these unlimited for a long time, and, they don't automatically win you the game, but they're certainly worth the mana. Let's do one more Cracker Pack here.
Already.
This one is from Lance McCauley. Thank you, Lance. I got to meet a lot of our listeners, Luis, at the GP.
And I can verify your cracking packs, not just playing your recorded pack cracking noise.
Yeah, the one where I keep opening super expensive cards and sending them off to our listeners.
Yeah.
My planning needs some work. Chandra's Revolution.
Playable, and slightly better than playable. I mean, it's good.
Definitely playable. That card's good.
I would not hate first picking this card. I think it's decent.
All right, you want to lock it in?
It's a below average first pick, that's for sure.
Metallic Rebuke.
Not a card I'm a big fan of.
I'm not either. I have seen people use it well.
It just dies so quickly in the late game.
I know.
And it's not like it's insane in the early game.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like kind of mediocre against other improvised cards.
If you 1-mana cast it on turn 5, you probably just win though, so that part is nice.
Yeah. I did hear an interesting remark during the when we were watching the limited review. One of the players said, well, this card's really high variance. It wasn't about Metallic Rebuke, it was about a different card. And then somebody else said, well, is that a bad thing?
It depends on who the player is.
Yeah, and the other guy said, well, it might be for you. But I do find that really interesting. I think that, part of what we preach on the podcast, given that our audience isn't, super high level professional players who get lots of repetitions in, is that, having that solid double does have some upside to it when you're trying to kind of learn the ropes of limited and really learn how to draft good decks, rather than kind of high variance cards that sometimes get there and sometimes don't, even if they were to average out the same over the long term. I'd rather hand somebody who drafts like once a week a card that we would call like a solid double, rather than a home run strikeout type card where like occasionally the card's great, but a lot of times it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, the whole point of these discussions is that, the variance isn't really relevant over the extreme long term, but it is on the short term.
In the long term, you'd rather have a card that's a 7 over a card that is either flip a coin, either a 10 or a 1, because a 10 or a 1, often that averages out to 5.5 or
whatever. But I mean, would you rather have a 5.5 or a 10 or 1? It shouldn't matter. Like, your win percentage shouldn't change. But like I said, if I'm somebody who's not somebody who drafts 100 times per format, or somebody,
I guess the way the scale works,
I would hand
matters.
them a 5. Yeah, it does.
Because in Magic, actually 10s are much better than twice as good as 5s.
That's true.
But let's assume they're not. Let's assume that
we put them through the currency converter.
Yeah, let's just assume that you have a card that's 20% to win you the game, or 80% to win you the game, or a card that's like 60% to win you the game. So the 20-80 split card is a lower expected value than the 60% card, but for some players that would be better.
Yeah, well, but what if it was the same? Right, that's what I'm getting. Like, the expected value is the same, but your individual, on each use, it could be wildly different.
Yeah,
I would rather give somebody the one that's in the middle so that they can have a better feel for the game and not feel, it throws people off. Like, there's a lot of that in poker, when it comes to variance, about how much you're willing to take on. Because if you can afford it, and in the case of a Magic card, you always can, because it's just ultimately one game of Magic is what will be decided by it at the very most. Maybe over the course of a few games, the more you play the card. But, that's ultimately not a huge cost. Where if you look at it, from an extreme long-term perspective, that isn't, it becomes irrelevant at some point.
You want to strive to be the player that just makes the highest EV play in every situation.
Right.
And through that lens, we would rather advocate for a card that has a slightly higher expected value, even if the variance is not as big.
Yes, that is exactly like where we would land. The interesting part is if they're the same.
If they're the same.
It's not really relevant, but like, one example that does come up is it starts to ask you about, okay, if these cards are equal in terms of EV for the long term, well, what else do they do for me? And one of the things they could do is really make you frustrated when they don't work out for you. Yeah. And then in which case, you're a human being and you might be playing worse. Well, it's just these little weird things that can be tiebreakers.
And also, I mean, it is true that the greater skill you have, the less variance you want in your game of Magic. If you're much better than your opponent, you want as few coin flip cards as possible.
Absolutely.
So there is an argument for that too. But
Audacious Infiltrator is our next card. Not a high variance card.
No, solid card though.
It's good though.
Yeah, I think it's
performed well for me. I mean, it looks like when they designed it, they said, let's make a high-powered 2-drop, but then everybody said, yeah, but it just dies to servos, and they said, let's just make it not die to servos.
Yeah, Infiltrator's quite good. I wouldn't blame you for taking it over Chandra's Revolution if that's what you wanted.
All right. That's not what I want. Alley Strangler?
Filler, just the definition of filler.
It's a classic C. Ooh, this is my guy here.
Ooh, Scrounging Bandar.
I like this card a lot.
I think it's quite good. I think I'd still have it below the removal spell, though.
I would too. But it's really impressed me. And it's in a color that I'm definitely happy
It's one of the better ways to trigger Revolt. It's one of the better ways to pile on an evasion creature. Obviously, there's combos with counters.
Ooh, we got a good one here. Daring
Demolition. Also a solid card. Based on my read of the format so far and after watching the limited meeting, talking with the members of Team ChannelFireball, I think that red is probably enough better than black that they would tend to lean towards the Chandra's Revolution over Daring Demolition, even though Daring Demolition I think is a better card.
Yeah, 2 black, sorcery, destroy target creature or vehicle. I love that one. A Lothnu Sailback. Yawn.
Yeah, playable, but not much more than that.
Here's an Implement of Improvement.
So implements are decent. The white one is one of the less attractive ones, because I think the red implement's probably the overall best one, because aggressive red improvised decks are going to be a little better than the others, and it's one of the 1-mana ones.
Yeah.
So
1 mana.
I think you'll still end up playing Implement of Improvement, but it's just not great.
Yeah. It's so weird because the red one, is definitely the least impactful of all of them, but it goes in the color that wants it the most. Welder Automaton.
I do like Welder Automaton. I think we're a worse red card than Chandra's Revolution, but still, I think not even playable good. Like,
it's good. It's
a 2-drop that's good in the late game.
Yeah. Aether Stream Leopard.
A fine playable, nothing special.
Yeah, that's where I'm on it too. Here's a card that I've actually been pretty impressed by. Invigorated Rampage. That's the 1 in a red instant. Choose one target creature gets +4/+0 and gains trample until end of turn, or you can have 2 creatures get +2/+0 and trample.
So
this card has piled on a hell of a lot of damage.
I think that even though it's a card disadvantage card, because anytime you use it to trade in combat, you're down a card, unless you have like a first strike or something. But it just does so much damage with like Iron Tread Crushers and Cowl Prowlers and whatnot that I do think it's a card your aggressive decks definitely want.
Yeah, another thing that I've noticed about the format is there's just enough incidental first strikers and double strikers laying around that this type of card just gets a little bump from that. Your Aether Chasers will win combat with this, and that's you're
and get a couple points of damage
and damage too. So yeah, I like Invigorated Rampage quite a bit. I would still take either of the 2 removal spells, the Chandra's Revolution or the Daring Demolition over it, though. Servo Schematic.
So it's a 2 colorless artifact. When it enters the battlefield or dies, you get a 1/1 servo. And it's just an improvised card. It's highly playable as an improvised card. You do want this card actively if you have a couple improvised cards in your deck, but not much of a card I would first pick.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you're supposed to pick this up later.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about him a minute ago. Here's Vengeful Rebel, the 2 and a black Aetherborn Warrior. It's a 3/2 with Revolt. When it ETBs, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn.
My main problem with the card is it's called Vengeful Rebel and it's not creature type Rebel. Like that.
That's pretty bad.
That seems like egregious, but I think it is the pick right now.
Do you really?
I think the card's quite good.
I have just been disappointed by it consistently.
Oh,
when it goes off, it's fantastic, but the 3/2 body is not great. It's good.
3/3 is fine.
Yeah, but you don't play it on turn 3. That's my point.
Yeah, but it's still fine later. It's still cruise vehicles. I also think
that's true.
I also think that the Revolt trigger never goes bad. It's always good. It's really hard to engineer a board position where that Revolt trigger isn't good, which means that even if it's late game, you can still set it up, and it's worth setting it up.
And that is a big part of the equation with Revolt that I've noticed is the ones, like the Lifecraft Cavalry.
Right, that you really want it on turn 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm able to actually have a board that I can try to set up to do it, where the ones that you really need at a very specific time, like the Harpooner that we talked about.
Or Countless Gears Renegade, getting a 1/1, it's like, you don't care on turn 9.
No, I just always play it, I do think this card's good. I'm a little down on it from where you are. I'm really down on our rare.
What we got?
Pia's
Revolution. Yeah, her Revolution's a lot less effective than Chandra's. Pia's Revolution is just not playable. It's just not even remotely playable. Whenever a non-token artifact you control goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, your opponent can take 3 damage or you return it to your hand. So.
Yeah, and it's a 3-mana enchantment. Yeah, I think we nailed this one in the set review pretty well, which is just that anytime your opponent has a choice, it's worse. And on top of it, this feels like it wants to be in an aggressive deck. And what a laughable card for an aggressive deck. So, all right. So what are we taking? Because this pack was stacked.
I'm taking Vengeful Rebel.
Okay, you're taking Vengeful Rebel. We've also got Daring Demolition
and Chandra's Revolution.
Here.
I think Vengeful Rebel is the best card there.
All right. Well, I like Daring Demolition better, and I would take that. I don't like Vengeful Rebel as much as you do. I haven't cut it from a black deck.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that you ever would, but I think it's a high enough upside, especially first pick.
Where you can kind of set it up a little bit better. Okay, well, let's get into the format here, Luis. We've got quite a few things that we wanted to talk about. A lot of it based on, again, the Team ChannelFireball Fire plus the Team Mutiny limited meeting, which gives us a perspective from people that have been talking about and drafting with each other significantly often and with a good sample size. That has its ups and its downs, right? There's a lot of different opinions in that room, and not all of them are going to have the chance to talk because they have to get through an entire meeting.
So we're talking 12 people.
Yeah, 12, and they're Magic players, they're pro Magic players, they're opinionated people. So it ends up getting distilled down a bit where they can't really go into the level of detail that they'd probably like if they had infinite time. But that being said, truths start to emerge, or people start to come
consensus starts to build.
Exactly, and and so what Luis and I are going to talk about that here, and also
kind of adding it,
put our own stuff.
Yeah, adding it to what we've picked up from, because I certainly didn't agree with everything that they were saying,
right?
As did you, and our role really isn't to push back too much because we're observers. We'll chime in here and there, but like we're not gonna argue.
I don't say anything. Yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity to be a fly on the wall.
I say
and
some
listen
stuff.
to what they say. Yeah, I mean that's your old testing team and a lot of your very close friends there too. So it's
also it's interesting to get clarification. Like one of the interesting things to come out is we came in right and they had it Consulate Dreadnought like pretty high up in the uncommon pile when they had all the uncommons.
Yeah, it wasn't high, but like
it was like with other
I would have assumed it
cards.
wasn't on there. Yeah, exactly.
And so I was like, so what's up with that? And their logic was it's not that hard to crew. So this is the 1 mana 7/11 crew 6. It's not that hard to crew with 2 creatures if you're prioritizing 3 power creatures. And it's very large. And the key part is that it's basically free. It costs 1 mana. So it's like, yeah, Ardar Express sucked. But if it cost 1 mana, you'd probably be playing that card.
I'd probably play it more than...
Because it kind of comes out without cost because it's always easy to sneak a 1-drop in there. And there's improvised implications too. And having a card that says if you can assemble 6 power, or in the case of Ardar Express 4 power, to just get in there is just like a huge beating. And not having an opportunity cost of taking your whole turn to play it is a big deal.
Yeah. And you can't, I mean, you could be cracking with that thing on turn 3. You play an Audacious Infiltrator into most of the 3 drops in the set and you can bash.
And even realistically, turn 4 is not that hard.
No, definitely not by turn 4. That's interesting to me. I have yet kind of like, to be destroyed by that.
And neither of us are advocating for it strongly because we haven't tried it, but it's that kind of interesting nugget to pick up when you look at, what 12 other people who are highly incentivized to test a lot. I would say the average number of drafts each player has done is probably around the 15 range, with some doing 30 or 40.
Yeah, that's a heck of a lot before the PTs even
so
started.
Even if you disagree with the conclusions, which we did with some of them, like we thought they had like Baral's expertise rated like, a couple notches too high, for example. That's more like nitpicking than like saying, overall, you didn't get anything right. Like, it's very interesting to see where people land here.
Absolutely. And there's, of course, reasons why they came to these conclusions. So let's talk about some of the things that we noticed. One of them was the prevalence and the level of acceptance that they all had for red-based aggro decks.
Yeah, this is the biggest takeaway, is that red went from being a color with one good common, essentially, to a color that's like prized. Because one of the things we're going to do today is take a look at the color pairs, and every red color pair was a deck that, the team liked. And part of the reason is that red has what they thought the best common was Aether Chaser, like the actual best common of all the commons.
Yeah.
For a couple reasons. One is that it always gets to attack on turn 3. I mean, it's very hard for it not to. So it's effectively a 3-power creature because you can make the servo, which helps in crewing vehicles. With Iron Tread Crusher being like a big standout, the 4 mana 6/6 crew 3.
Yeah.
And the other is that it makes any combat tricks or cards like Shock just multiply, because First Strike just stacks so well with all those cards. So having the best common and having a good aggressive game plan is really important in a set where, yes, this is a synergy-based set. Improvise and Revolt say that. But 2 things. First, Revolt sucks. I think it's just not good.
Can we just get that on the table right now? Because I've been hinting at this since I saw it. And ever since I played with it, I've been feeling it.
Would you call it revolting?
I wouldn't call it that bad, but
no.
The thing that has always seemed to be the case and is now starting to actually come to fruition here is that setting up Revolt is hard, so you need a big payoff. And if you just like type in to your search engine Revolt and just look at all of the cards that have Revolt, very few of them are actually great.
Yeah. So given that the Revolt deck really doesn't exist, like, yes, there are some individual Revolt cards. In this Cracker Pack, I wanted to take Bench 4 Elbow first pick over a good common removal spell. Clearly, I put some value on cards with Revolt.
But that is the best one.
Yes. Discounting, I guess, maybe some rares, if there's even something much better. But Revolt not being a deck means that part of synergy doesn't really matter that much, right? Because it's just not a huge impact. And then Improvise is kind of by nature aggressive. The whole deal with Improvise is you're playing 6, 5, and 4 drops a turn or 2 earlier, or on turn 5 you're playing like a 4 drop plus a 3 drop. And that sort of power is harnessed best in aggressive decks, and red just seems very well poised. It has the best implement for that because it's 1 drop implement that helps your aggressive strategy. It has the best common for that. Aether Chaser does also fuel Improvise, by the way, with that servo. Like turn 2, Aether Chaser, turn 3, Sweatworks Brawler is just a sick opening.
Yeah.
You have 6 power in play on turn 3, and then 5 of it kind of has evasion, either First Strike or Menace. So red just got a huge boost, and red X is basically draftable. We can go through it. Yeah, so let's go through. Like white red is I think the standout because white red vehicles just remains quite good. You have Renegade Wheelsmith, the gold uncommon, kind of like piloting the ship as it were, and then Iron Tread Crusher with all the 3 power creatures, just a good curve in general. And red-white just still seems like it's got everything it needs to be one of the better decks. You have red-blue, which went from, I think, the 10th out of 10 color pairs in Triple Kaladesh to actually draftable now, which a lot of these decks, if they're open, are going to be base red. Like, you want them to be base red, and here you're playing like 5 or 6 blue cards. Like, Maverick Thoptrist is a great gold uncommon for the set, for the deck. And then blue has like Hinterland Drake, which is just a great aggressive attacker, and a couple support cards. Blue, generally like bounce spells, for example, are good support for this kind of deck, but still base red. So that is, I think, also just a very legit archetype. And then red-black and red-green are both a little different. Like, red-green tends to be a little bigger. It has bigger creatures in general. You're going to go up the curve a little bit higher, but still very capable of just being aggressive. Still wants the aggressive red cards. And then red-black tends to delve into a little bit more removal. Just having 2 common removal spells in black means that...
The ones we got here.
Yeah, Cruel Finality and Daring Demolition just means that you're going to end up in a spot where, yes, your deck's aggressive, but you might have 6 removal spells instead of 3. So, and you're less likely to focus on like combat tricks, for example. But the key here is, and this is one of the reasons that you say like a color is better than the other color, it's not just that red is better, even though it is, it's also that red plus any color is viable.
Yeah.
Whereas we're going to talk about some of the other, we're going to hit all 10 color combinations here, just, an overview of them. But a key part is like some of the other ones, like, to use white, green, or white, black that we're going to talk about later as an example. Those are just not good color combinations. And that's a weakness for white, especially, because if white is good when it's white red and good when it's white blue, but not great when it's white black or white green, when you first pick a white card, you're really closing the door on some other possibilities where these other color combinations are just not strong enough that you want to consistently draft them. Nothing's undraftable. I drafted blue red in Kaladesh, even though it was the worst. You'll draft white black or white green when the cards are there. But something like white red, there's always a white red deck at the table. There's just not always going to be one of these other decks.
You mentioned Iron-Trade Crusher in there kind of quickly. Let's talk about that card for a minute, because when you and I saw it, we were both kind of like, yawn.
Yeah, it didn't look that good.
Yeah, it didn't look that good. Like, they gave us some of these huge vehicles in Kaladesh that had like a relatively high crew cost. This time it's 3. And, the vanilla ones just didn't really pack enough punch to be great. But it looks like Iron-Trade Crusher does hit a reasonable sweet spot being as big as it is at 6/6.
Yeah, it's a combination of it being legit large, where it's really hard to take down in combat, and there being a decent amount of 3-power creatures. Like, again, Aether Chaser counts, Audacious Infiltrators has 3 power. You've got a lot of, like, Sweatworks Brawler. You have a lot of low rarity cards that can get there. If you Revolt, Countless Gears Renegade gets there, I guess. But that means that you can crew this thing without having to tap 2 creatures enough of the time that you end up getting pretty good value out of it. Because, it is big. It is hard to stop. It's the kind of card that really helps pressure your opponent. It doesn't cost tons of mana.
Better than it looked.
Yeah.
If they would have shown me that as one of the first vehicles, I would have been like, wow. And then realized, slowly later.
Yeah, it's not Renegade Freighter is the thing.
It's not. It's a tier below that, right?
Yes.
But it's still playable.
It's more than playable.
I
think it's good.
Yeah. Let's talk about blue-green energy, because this was, one of the... it often had red in it when we drafted Kaladesh, but this was one of the decks that we liked a lot.
Yeah, blue-green energy was awesome. Thriving Rhino, it was just such a good card.
Yeah.
That it kind of helped you justify a lot of the other energy cards. And I'm really down on energy once it comes to Aether Revolt. You just lose, like, besides the cycle of, Aether, like Aether Chaser, Aether Poisoner, etc., there's just not that many cards that give you energy or use energy. Yeah. So you end up stranded where energy is a really parasitic mechanic. You need like 5 cards on each side to really be confident that, like, yeah, this is great. Or like 6 energy makers and 3 good energy, utilizers. Whereas now you're just going to end up like, I've just had these decks that have like a couple Aether creatures and like maybe one other way to mess with energy, and that's it.
Plus those payoffs are like...
No, the payoffs are just not there. Like
1/1 servos?
RIP Whirler Virtuoso.
Yeah, seriously.
So that makes blue-green energy... First of all, it makes the Kaladesh cards less appealing. And second, the theme, even in Aether Revolt, is just... It's not really... Like, Improvise is only supported by blue, and green has, like, +1/+1 counters a little bit. Like, it just isn't a theme that meshes well, so blue-green kind of ends up confused. Like, yeah, you can still splash. You still have, Renegade map if you want to splash in this set. But I'm really just... not that interested in Unbridled Growth as well. I'm not that interested in drafting blue-green as I was. That used to be a deck that I think had just high card quality and good synergy. Now it's kind of lost a little bit on both.
Yeah. I mean, you still have some of the payoffs in Kaladesh. It's just too much risk to try to bank on getting one of those late in the game.
Oh, yeah.
One of the decks that really saw very little play in Kaladesh, but seems to be back with a vengeance here, is blue-white flyers with cards like Hinterland Drake and Spire Patrol to get the job done in the air as attackers. This deck seems like it's back. It's legit. It's one that people look for often in Limited, and it kind of wasn't there in Kaladesh.
Yeah, it's funny. That's actually notable because I would say, I don't know what percentage, but way over 50%. Blue-white flyers is just a legit archetype. Blue-white skies. That's just always something, because just blue has good flyers, white has good flyers, white and blue both get like a decent temporary removal, and it's just a good recipe, right?
Yeah.
So almost every set has that. Kaladesh, I think it notably didn't. Windrake was just such a bad card.
It was so bad.
But now,
which is weird, because Windrake is traditionally like a rock-solid
Yeah, it's just a fine,
yeah.
card.
Mm-hmm.
Now Windrake's better because this deck's better. Also, white got Windrake and Gira Osprey, and you end up just with a deck that can assemble enough good flyers and enough bounce and tempo cards, just like in the right ratios to make it a legit threat. Like, you do want to be aggressive, you do want to be attacking. You're not really going to be that interested in vehicles because your creatures tend to have, you're paying 3 mana for 2 power creatures a lot more than paying 3 mana for 3 power creatures. So this isn't the Iron Tread Crusher deck, but Hinterland Drake's a very powerful card. 3 mana 2/3 flyer with a negligible drawback is quite good. And blue again has the flagship uncommon Inspire Patrol. And it just has enough, little tricks that it can push itself past here.
Yeah, and we opened up a Thopter Arrest and a Caught in the Brights in our previous pack, which are both fine cards for a deck like that. Just slowing down the ground game and letting your blockers do their thing while your creatures fly over. It is time tested, and it does seem to be back here. Next one I want to talk about is Black Green. This is my personal favorite 2-color pairs currently in the format, just because it lets you kind of have the best of it, but also have a sick upside too. And what I mean by that is you get the really good green creatures, which specifically the uncommons are very, very good. The Malphus Revolutionary and the Ridgescale Tusker. But then you also get access to the black removal spells, the Daring Demolition that we talked about earlier, and the other one too,
Cruel Finality.
The Cruel Finality, yeah. And those are just the commons. You still get fatal pushes and stuff like that too. So I like that. And then on top of it, they've just layered this +1/+1 counter sub theme, and they've supported it in a reasonable way as well, with cards like Scrounging Bandar that let you get counters moved around, to then multiply with cards like Lifecrafter's Gift, for kind of big blowouts. And of course, the crux of all of that is a Winding Constrictor, which leads to busted, stupid things happening. Card has proven very, very powerful. And this is the color pair, of course, that it goes best in, being black and green. So, yeah, I don't know. This one to me feels like it has a nice high floor, and the ceiling's really high too.
Yeah, when you start with Winding Constrictor, the deck ends up being great.
Yeah.
Even when you don't, the deck has a lot of outs to be good, like you said. And yeah, it all just feels solid. It's not utilizing any themes to a very high degree. The +1/+1 counter is the main theme. But it still just has a lot of quality cards and at the right points on the curve. And that's kind of important too, is one of the reasons that I think control decks are not as good in this format. And look, I love drafting control decks. I mean, we did in Kaladesh, even though a lot of people said that wasn't great. I still thought it was good.
Yeah.
But in this format, I'm not looking to do that. I've tried it a bunch of times and it just doesn't work. And a big part of that is the threats are too efficient. You've got all these great 2 and 3 drop threats. Your removal spells cost 4. You also have cards like Vehicles. Vehicles tend to be very resilient to a lot of removal. Just
Absolutely.
Dodges all sorcery speed removal. They're gigantic, so cards like Shock or Cruel Finality is just not going to kill them. So you end up in a situation where threats are either cost less than the removal spells or are resilient, and those are historically the kinds of formats where control is just not good. Because control is kind of, the traditional control deck is use efficient removal to kill your opponent's creatures, or use good blockers. And see, the good blockers part doesn't work that well either. Vehicles run over blockers.
Right.
Iron Tread Crusher is going to run over any wall. Your Consulate Skygate might look great, but it's just going to get, run over by an Iron Tread Crusher. You also have like pseudo evasion creatures and, good flyers or cards like Dawn Feather Eagle that pump your team, and the wall strategy starts looking really bad. If walls aren't good or good blockers aren't good, and removal spells are generally less efficient, not powerful enough, what is your payoff? Like, you're supposed to cast those into a good late game or some card draw spells, but the payoffs aren't there and the removal's not there. So I'm not saying you can never draft a control deck. Sometimes you will. But for the most part, control seems like less of a good strategy than aggro or mid-range, and that just leaves you in a spot where most of the time you're going to be looking to push the offensive. Black-green kind of dodges that because the green creatures just are good enough and it has the black removal to back it up. But even then, I think Winding Constrictor is the way you get into this deck more often than not, just because that's just such a flagship card.
What about white-black and white-green? We touched on those earlier. White-black, was a color combo that you and I both liked quite a bit.
Yeah, it had two kind of different things going on. One was the go wide theme with Fabricate and Inspired Charge. And then the other was the kind of artifact-based value deck with like Restoration Gearsmith and Underhanded Designs and whatnot. And losing all the Fabricate cards, you only have one pack of them now, it makes it so the go wide deck is so much worse. It's basically undraftable. Like, you just can't reliably get it. Like, sure, you might put Inspired Charge in your deck sometimes, but you're just not going to have a deck that has 5 cards that make servos anymore.
Yeah, Fabrication leaving basically put that one in the rearview mirror.
And then losing good, powerful recursion cards, I think, also made it so the white-black value deck just suffers from the same problem as the control decks I just mentioned. It's just not good to be the reactive deck right now. And as such, I think white-black took a big hit. That's a color combination I actively would look to avoid. It's just not high on my list. Like, yes, sometimes it will be open. Like, you have to keep in mind that you first pick, a good white card, then second pick a good white card, third pick a Fatal Push, fourth pick a Daring Demolition. You can draft black-white. There are sets of cards where the deck is good. But in general, all things being equal, the tiebreaker should be to default to, I think, a stronger, more reliable color combination, because the problem is, even in that scenario I just mentioned, if one of those colors dries up and you're getting the mediocre cards, your deck ends up much worse. Whereas a red-white deck with a couple of good cards and a bunch of mediocre ones can still very much be good. Like, you don't need the premium cards to justify it. Whereas white-black, you need a higher concentration of premium cards. You'll only draft it if it's very open. And white-green suffers from, I think, a similar fate where the go-wide stuff is less good. You have
these are also Revolt colors, all of these.
And that's a critical point too, is that they're both Revolt color combinations, and the Revolt theme is just not one that has played out well.
Yeah, it just hasn't played out
Maybe
well.
if you get 6 great Revolt cards and like 5 enablers, you can do it, but I don't see you getting the critical mass necessary.
No, I don't.
And the payoff's just not there. So,
and I've tried it.
Oh yeah,
I have. And occasionally you get a Revolt card to do something good.
Sometimes you Renegade map into Countless Gears Renegade and you're like, yeah, we did it.
And it just
then they play a 2/3 and you're like, I guess we didn't.
Right, it just doesn't feel like you really did anything that exciting or that great, and I think it's just because the overall power level on the Revolt cards is relatively low. A couple other things, a couple specific cards and some interactions I wanted to bring up to you, Lisa. Implements and Renegade Map are cards that we spotted early as cards that would be enablers for the different strategies in the format, like Improvise and Revolt. And they have proven that way, specifically for Improvise, again, because Revolt has just proven itself to be not super worth it to go for. If Revolt's bad, then are Implements and Maps mainly just for the Improvise decks?
Basically, and I think that's a big part of the strength, is you have these kind of low-cost enablers, because Renegade Map certainly gets your card back. Like, the card is great. You just play it in a 2-color deck no matter what. And the Implements, obviously trade themselves for a card too. So you're playing these like mana rocks, right? Because they help accelerate out your Sweatworks Brawlers or Bastion Inventors. And then when you're done tapping them for mana, you can then cash them in for whatever effect they have. And it helps you.
And usually for cheap.
Yeah. And what it helps you do is 2 things. One, if you get enough of them and enough improvised cards, you can play fewer lands. So you can end up with like 15 lands and 1 Renegade Map and then like a bunch of implements and then a bunch of improvised cards and end up with a higher threat density. The other is that you just curve out faster. Like, a turn 3 Bastion Inventors is really hard to stop. If you just play a 1-drop into like a servo schematic, you can play it on turn 3. And 4/4 hexproof on turn 3 is a real big deal. So these cards have proven to be good enough because Improvise is good enough, because the common improvised cards tend to be good enough. And yeah, I mean, there's also rare improvised cards, like Free Jam Region is just great. The uncommon 4/4 Trample Haste Giant is also quite good.
The Enraged Giant.
Yeah, and you end up in a spot where like these are worth striving for too. So it's what Revolt was lacking, is the payoffs. And the payoffs are here. Improvised cards, first of all, they're not even overcosted. They're like costed about what I would expect them to cost, like maybe 1 over. So when you're playing them for 1 or 2 cheaper or 3 cheaper, you're getting a really good deal. And there's enough support because the Implements and Renegade Map and then like Servo Schematic either dump multiple artifacts, so they double count, or they're artifacts that replace themselves. And that's really what these decks need to get going,
Dawnfeather Eagle?
See, this is weird because this is a card I would read and think it would be an uncommon, and then I look and it's a common.
Yeah.
It just reads like an uncommon.
It plays like one too.
And there's a reason for that. It's a 3/3 flyer for 5, which is already like pretty good. Not great, but good. But it comes with +1 vigilance for your whole team, so you just get to alpha strike without much fear. Very, very good card. It's a card. It's kind of the high end you want. It's just such a better high end than most of the other like commons that at comparable costs.
Another card that I saw on the when things were getting laid out in a few different forms, higher than I thought it would, specifically in one of the layouts that we saw, but even in the other one, was Pacification Array. So I want to talk to you about this card because it's actually very difficult to grade what it's doing when it's on the board. Because when I saw Pacification
mostly tapping
Array,
things.
Yeah, well, actually no. Like that's actually why I wanted to bring this up, because it's a little clunky, right? 2 mana to tap something is not particularly cheap, and leaving that up time after time can add up. But it's a powerful effect, right? Tappers are great because they tend to scale with what your opponent does. And this one is a 1 mana artifact that you can use for improvise. And I mean, you mentioned it earlier, 1 mana is borderline free. I mean,
there's almost always a turn where you can play it.
Yeah, even if it's not turn 1, which it often is. Even if it's down the line, you play a 3-drop on turn 4 and you play your Pacification Array. And so that part's all good. And it's lined up to be a card that I felt definitely held its own in my decks. But here's the weird thing. I keep looking at it with respect to vehicles. I can't figure out, I want you to help me here, is it good or bad against vehicles? Because I'll describe the scenario.
No, I know exactly
Do you know what I'm talking about?
So the reason I said yes is because there's not a clear answer.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. So let's look at the easiest scenario. You have Pacification and 2 mana up, no blockers.
Yeah.
They have an Iron Tread Crusher, crew 3/6/6, and a vanilla 3/3.
Yeah.
If they animate Crusher and then go to attack, you tap the Crusher. Easy.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that.
They're going to say, can I attack? And if you tap their 3/3, they'll animate Crusher, hit you for 6. So what you do is you just take 3.
Yep.
And
you didn't do anything with your Pacification
No,
Array.
and you can tap something in a turn if they play something else. But so that's kind of annoying in that your card is not stopping them from attacking you. But on the other hand, they had 2 creatures out, and you had a Pacification Array. They do have 2 cards out.
Yeah, it's like an Oblivion Ring's their best vehicle.
And one of them isn't doing anything. The other is, let's say you have a 4/4. Now it actually is stopping them, because they can't attack you with the 3/3. So you just let them go to attack. If they attack the 3/3, great, you block and maybe they have a trick, whatever. Or they don't attack. But if they animate the Crusher, you then get to tap it. So basically, what it comes down to is, if you have to tap the vehicle and prevent that from attacking, you basically just don't use the array. That means that they can't use their vehicle, and they still get to attack with their other things. If you tap something and they can crew the vehicle and attack you with that instead, yes, you end up with your card not stopping all their attacks. But in general,
what card would do that?
Yeah,
anyway,
right. In general, this card does interact well against against vehicles, because it forces them to either not make the decision of not crewing before they attack, which means maybe their attacks are weaker, or they crew and you get to lock down 2 things.
Yes. I think the X factor here that we have to mention that really kind of puts the pieces together, because it feels very strange when you're in game and they're like, go to attacks, and you're like, go for it, and then they just smash you and you're like, didn't use your array.
It's not a normal feeling.
No, but the reason I brought this up is because the thing that we haven't said that's really important is you still have to leave the 2 mana available.
Yes. You
are locked in if you want to keep that vehicle gone, to not spending that 2 mana every turn.
The upside is that you do get to tap end of turn. So if it's a race situation, they get to do the thing where they hit you with their 4/4, but not their vehicle. You just take it, and then end of turn you tap whatever other creature they have, and maybe you get to attack them back.
Smash them back, and then leave up the 2 again.
It's hard to give a blanket rule. In general, you're not tapping anything with array if they have a giant vehicle in play.
Okay. Yeah, it's a strange, because I remember thinking when I saw it, oh, this is so good against vehicles, they can just never do it.
It is good against vehicles in that it stops the vehicle, but it doesn't.
Should I just be happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. It's not
like an upkeep of 2 and your vehicle never gets activated?
And you still get to tap end of turn, remember. And what you're not getting is the thing you want, which is they crew their vehicle, then you own it with an instant speed spell. Because the pacification is on the board. They're not going to walk into it.
They're not going to do that, yeah. And maybe I should just be happy with that. And I think it's felt weird, but it hasn't felt bad either. Peace Walker Colossus. This was one that popped up in the meeting that I played against it a couple of times and been like medium. It's 3 mana 6/6 vehicle, and you can pay 1 and a white to basically crew another vehicle, and its crew cost is 4. It's pretty hefty.
Peace Walker Colossus is a solid card. It's
now, if you don't have any other vehicles, it's just dead to you?
No.
You would play it?
It's not as good as Iron Tread Crusher in that scenario, but it only takes like 1 or 2 more vehicles before I'm kind of interested, because 3 mana is a lot better than 4 mana.
Yeah.
And Crew 4 is a lot worse than Crew 3. So on balance, I think it's worse than Iron Tread Crusher on stats alone. Mm-hmm. But the ability is good, and sometimes your deck really just wants a vehicle, even if it's one that's like a little bit harder to crew.
Yeah. But you wouldn't go nuts on it.
No, I'm not going to take this and then take 5 RR Expresses under the assumption that like, we're getting in there.
Yeah. That was one of the cards that definitely stood out to me. When it came to the peaks, you mentioned the Aether Chaser being the best common in their mind. I'm not ready to come down on that decision yet. I think Aether Chaser's great. It still could be that one of these removal spells, it ultimately gives me a better 1%, especially like what I first picked out of the second pack, the Daring Demolition. You mentioned it, how hard it is to kill vehicles, and this just says destroy target vehicle if you want, and that's just very, very powerful in my mind because, vehicles are, like, I think the creatures that you put in a control deck tend to block other creatures fairly well, but they don't block vehicles well. So you need to have an outlet to kill a vehicle, and that's one of the better ways to do it. Now, when it came to the uncommons, the one that stood alone was Untethered Express, which I agree with 100%.
Yeah, I think the debate between Untethered Express, the 4 mana, 4/4 vehicle, crew 1 when it attacks, trample, ++1 counter, and Ridgescale Tusker is very close.
Yes.
The Tusker is the 3 green 5/5 that puts ++1 counter on all your other creatures, the uncommon Gear Hook.
Yeah.
Power level, I think the Tusker is actually better.
Absolutely.
But first pick, first pack, the reason that Untethered Express is nudges it as you're taking a colorless card.
Yeah.
And your always going to play it. It's just a great card.
You're just going to play it in basically every deck.
Yeah, I think those are the top 2 uncommons, and I think Untethered Express gets the nod just because it's colorless. But if you're in green and you open both of them pack 2, you're probably taking the Ridgescale Tusker.
I agree. I do think the Tusker is a better card, but that's just not as relevant when you're first picking. Now, when it came to the rares, they did have 2 cards at the top of the heap that I also have as the 2 best cards in the set. Number 1 for me is still Aether Sphere Harvester that we had talked about earlier.
3 mana, 3/5, flying crew 1. Gets 2 energy, then you can pay an energy to give it lifelink.
Card is savagely dumb.
Yeah.
Again, we knew that. And then the other one is Walking Ballista, which has really done good work. I've had it a couple of times in sealed, and I could imagine scenarios where that card is like medium. They just don't come up. It's just awesome. The card is just super, super good. Against most decks, it tends to pull its weight. I mean, I could see if your opponent had a bunch of 5/5s or whatever, but you're not.
Yeah, it's not going to get you out of every situation, but it has synergy with other cards. It's also just a card that's like good in the early to mid game and great in the late game is just a card you want.
Yeah, and I agreed with them for sure that this was near the peak.
The one thing I want to touch on was blue-black, since we didn't really mention that.
Yes, let's go back to that.
And that is, I think, more improvised-based, the more proactive version where you have Fenhauler and Bastion Inventor as your 2 big common payoffs. And then you have cards like Augmenting Automaton actually does work in this deck. This is the 1 mana 1/1 that you can pay 1 and a black to give +1/+1.
It taps for mana.
It's a Sludge Crawler.
Yeah.
So it's like blue-black with a lot of cheap artifacts. You actually can pick up Gear Seeker, Serpents, and Kaladesh. And your artifacts segue nicely into the Kaladesh black cards, like Doomed Operative and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think the deck is fine. I'm not like actively looking to draft it, but I do think you want to be more proactive when you do draft it. Then in Kaladesh, I would tend to draft blue-black as a more controlling deck, but for the reasons I stated before, I would rather just be kind of on the warpath with it instead.
All right. Do we have anything that we want to say before we go? Let's talk about something big picture style here. So we've thrown a lot of information at our listeners here, kind of shotgunned it at them. Information flying in left and right. We talked about the color
under the
pairs,
guise of the 10 color pairs, I think.
Yeah, which I think is good. But when they walk away here, what should they have in their head about approaching the format?
Be proactive, be aggressive. Removal spells are fine, but don't try to draft like a deck with removal spells, expensive cards, and good early blockers, because that's just hard to pull off. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in general, you want to be the person curving out and forcing your opponent to react rather than the reverse, because it just seems to be more successful to be on the person facing forward, which not always true. Some formats do reward control decks, and they're draftable. But this just doesn't appear to be one of those formats. I'm going to try it still, but I'm not claiming any degree of success based on that.
Yeah, and I think that my take on it would be that I agree with the general sentiment, but that I don't think that this is one of those formats that only supports that type of thing. I do think that we have some flexibility here to do it. And of course, once you know what your opponents are playing, what they're planning to do, and what type of decks, you can draft accordingly as well and pick some cards that'll help you win those fights specifically that maybe wouldn't be good in general. But the other thing, I did have one more parting thought about the format, Luis, before we go to our sign off here. People are confused about this format. I've talked to pros, I've talked to all types of different people at all levels, and I've gotten more help. I can't figure out this format than I have about any in quite a while.
Well, I do want to say that, we touched on this before. Kaladesh is, I think, a format where there's a lot of mixed opinions, and I'm willing to believe that we were somewhat outvoted, and that is fine. But I do think that these formats have just been confusing because there's so many powerful, strange interactions going on. And this is our snapshot of the format right now. Of course, heavily biased by the limited meeting we did watch. I mean, that's part of the reason to watch it, is to get that information. I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple weeks our tune is a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I do think the underlying removal spells are somewhat inefficient. Threats are very efficient. That's hard to get around for me because I do think that's when the control decks are always so bad. Trust me, I've drafted so many control decks in so many formats, and the ones where they fail are when your removal spells cost 4 and 5, and there's also vehicles are a new thing that just punish control too. So this is how you end up in a format with more proactive decks. But whether the actual color pair rankings or common rankings stand, those I'm less confident in, because that's the sort of stuff that can change a little bit more easily. And it'll be really interesting, seeing how the Pro Tour plays out, seeing how the Magic Online data plays out, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and we'll have, of course, a lot more information after the Pro Tour, though. I did do quite a bit, and I should take a minute to mention the GP I played in last week, and I'll just do kind of a little quick tournament report here. I did play in GP San Jose. I mentioned that. It was a blast to play in. I hadn't played in one in a year and a half or 2 years. But I will say, man, it's tough. It is tough playing in those things because the pool I opened, I ended up building a white-black Revolt deck. And it was a few cards short of being what I would consider a very good Revolt deck. It looked like a draft Revolt deck. But I knew going in that I did not want to be a Revolt deck. I had all the payoffs. I had a Vengeful Rebel. I had a Harpooner. And I just looked and I just said, the ceiling on this deck is still not very high. Somebody that just randomly opened an Aether Sphere Harvester.
If all my cards work, my cards are about as good as my opponents. Yes. When they don't work, they're much worse.
Yes. And then the other thing that happens is I'm like, well, the good news is that I'm playing straight white-black, good mana, no issues with that. And I can just default to just beating people down, because people get really greedy with their sealed pools, especially at GPs, where they're like, I need to play this, splash this double colored, whatever. And, they skip a land drop or they miss something and you can just smash them. But I couldn't. I was playing 2/2s for 3, I'm just like, Harpooner, your move, And my big end game revolved around 2 copies of Resourceful Return. And I could very consistently draw the card and get a card back. Which is a powerful thing to do, except for that I was buying back crappy Revolt creatures and unable to trigger them or just replaying them. And ultimately my opponents would often overwhelm me. But I have to say, like I said, I ended up finishing 5 and 4 on the day, which was pretty disappointing. I didn't have any buys, which makes it tougher, but I was quite happy with how I played. I thought about it afterwards. I did have one devastating play against me that I actually did the thing where you go up to your friends and you say hey, I need you to help me go over this play because I'm scarred right now. I just have no idea if I did this right or wrong, or, if I was even thinking about this correctly. And basically the scenario was that I had 3 or 4 servos on the battlefield, and I had a hidden stockpile, the enchantment that lets you sack creatures, and I was scrying every turn, and my opponent had gotten me all the way down to 4 life, and they had a 3/2 creature on the battlefield. And I had a 2-powered flyer plus these servos, and I finally had ground them down. They were at 28. I was behind this entire game, and I was trying this line of play to get me to a stable end game, and it worked, and I got there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start closing the door on this game. So I was attacking with my flyer plus enough servos so that I would have 2 left over. thinking that I could have 2 to block my opponent's 3/2, so it would dissuade them from attacking. But also, in case one of them were to die, I could chump with the other and not go to 1, which would put me in range of, a few more cards. And so I'm jamming, and I was also scrying every turn. Well, my opponent played a pretty good creature on their turn, and it was a Gifted Aetherborn. And that's a type of card that can really change the race, hold back all my servos, and make my life miserable. So I attacked with my creatures, and I used, I forgot the name again, the -2/-2.
Cruel Finality?
Yeah, Cruel Finality to kill the Aetherborn. In my hand, I had a Tidy Conclusions, but I didn't have enough mana to cast it anymore. But again, at 4 life, I felt pretty safe with the 2 servos back, so I said, go. And my opponent drew their card and they stared at it and they're like, their eyes kind of got big and I'm like, wow, like this could be bad for me. And they played Fleetwheel Cruiser, which was just perfect against the 2 servos.
Block, go to 0.
Block, go to 0. And I lost the game. Okay. And I thought about it after. There's even a few other cards that I could have lost to there, like the Ovalchase Dragster and Invigorated Rampage. But I think the thing, like it stung because it was game 3 and it was a really hard fought match.
Yeah.
I felt like my opponent's deck was also significantly better than mine. So I was really like, okay, I've actually done it. Also, I watch and play so much Magic that I have a very good sense for when I'm overwhelmingly a favorite to win. And I felt like I was in that scenario.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, especially. And then the worst thing though is that like, as I go to pick up my cards, I have to stare at this stupid Tidy Conclusion that I had in my hand.
It would have gained you like 4 life.
4
or
life.
something.
And put me reasonably out of range of anything.
Yeah.
And so and I used like a removal spell on, my opponent had like a demon. Like he had stuff that I really didn't want to keep Cruel Finality around for that I really wanted to keep. But I clearly could have taken a different, more safe line.
Yeah, the other line is just hit in the air for 2, pass all your mana up.
Exactly.
And then you let your opponent make the first move.
Exactly. And instead I was more, my mentality was, my opponent's card quality is better than mine. Mine's better because I'm scrying when I return thanks to the stockpile. Whichever one got blocked, I just scryed it away.
Right.
But, my mentality was like, I want to try to close the door on this game quickly because my opponent, again, has just better cards than I do. And I don't want to give them a chance to draw something. But man, looking back, I'm just, I second guessed all of that stuff because I lost, and I hadn't seen the Fleetwheel Cruiser like, in the first 2 games or whatever. But I got to tell you, Luis, going through those ups and downs, man, like being in the booth is hard work. Like I don't finish the day without being very tired. But and playing Magic was a lot more chill. But holy crap, man, the emotional ups and downs that you get from winning and losing and am I going to win and what's going on, especially when you don't get to play GPs that often, are very real. And I felt pretty tired after that day too, just after that, because I just felt like I was so all over the place. With the day. But like I said, I ended up feeling like I played pretty well. And I actually feel like I ran quite bad. There was multiple games where I just didn't really get to play. And those are the type of games that can really catch up to you when you don't have the buys. But anyway, I did talk to a lot of our listeners because when I'm out there the whole time, I can talk to people where when I'm in the booth, it's like only when I'm out and they'll come kind of flag me down or whatever. But here I'm just out and about. And we got a lot of people that were saying that they remembered listening to the episode where we urged them to play in a GP. And they said, I said, screw it. I'm just going to go try it, even though I didn't feel like I was super comfortable. And I got to say, that was pretty cool talking to a lot of them because they came to the GP because we said so. So we're very powerful wizards, Luis. We have to keep ourselves in check. Anyway, hopefully I'll get to play another GP soon. Okay, let's call this thing a show. If you want to find us on social media, it's easy. I am Marshall_LR and he is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com, which of course has links to everything, including streams, YouTube channels, Facebook page, the subreddit, everything related to the show is right on the front page of that. You can also see an archive of the shows. There you can go back and listen to all the old episodes with the old hosts and that kind of stuff. And there's a blog that I'll post stuff occasionally on as well. That is going to do it for the show this week from Dublin. We'll be back home next week recording from our normal places. But yeah, I'll see you then. All right, so we've got kind of a pack of visions here. All right, so let's get into it.
All right.
You're dead. You're so dead. There's some cards that are like for real, but man. All right, Keeper of Kukis.
Red for a 1/1.
No, you can't snap this
For
one
a
off.
1/1 goblin, you can pay a red to give it protection from red until end of turn.
Oh my god.
He keeps cookies.
All right, this one's good though. This card's actually good, so you'll know it, I think. Fallen Ascari.
Yeah, 1 and a black for a 2/2 flanking, and it can't block.
Okay. Emerald Charm.
This is 1 green mana.
Wait a second, you're answering way too
Target
quick.
creature loses flying, untap target permanent, or destroy target local enchantment. I guess it'd be aura. Or no, global enchantment.
There you go. Oh, you saved it.
Yeah.
What the hell, man? You just knew all those.
I just got lucky 3 times.
Destroy target global enchantment.
I had all the modes on Emerald Charm.
Dude, you're lying. Oh, this next card's very topical. Betrayal.
This is 1 blue mana enchant creature. When it becomes tapped, draw a card.
Are you reading my screen?
No.
You couldn't read from over there anyway. You were right. Coercion.
2 and a black sorcery. Look at target player's hand. They discard a card.
Breezekeeper. You don't know this
3 and a blue, 4/4 flying phasing.
Oh my god. You know this said inside and out. What a line sack. Is this like the first one you did or something?
No.
You're not getting lucky. You're snapping these off.
I'm just getting lucky, actually.
There's no hesitation. You just snapped off Emerald Charm. You are lying.
That card got played in Vintage for a while.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We are 6 cards in, and you are a clean 6 for 6. So the over's looking good, especially looking at 3 cards that I know. And I'm not super familiar with this set. All right, this one has a lot of text. Maybe we'll get you here. What about Dwarven Vigilantes? Got him.
Yes, this one I do not know.
All right, here.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2.
Are you serious?
When it attacks and isn't blocked, it can deal 2 damage to target creature and opponent control. It doesn't deal combat damage this turn.
You were close enough. It is 2 damage, but it's its power, which is a 2/2, yeah. Wow. It really is the artwork.
Yeah, I got to see the picture.
So, yeah, I'll explain. So, at home, Luis does this. This is the part that's always completely blown my mind. I just read him a name of a card. He doesn't even have the artwork in front of him to be able to, make anything. And he said, well, if I had the artwork, I'd just get them all. And I told him Dwarven Vigilantes, and he just kind of gave me the blank look. And I turned my laptop. I'm on the other side of the room, so there's no way he could read it. And he just... I'm giving you credit for that one.
All right. Sure,
that was a hard card.
Yeah.
That wasn't the 2/2. Infantry Veteran.
1 white for a 1/1 tap target attacking creature gets ++1 until end of turn.
Crypt Rats. One of the best cards.
2 and a black for...
One of the best commons.
Yes. It's a common somehow. 2 and a black for a 1/1. You can pay X to deal X damage to each creature and player.
Yes, and you can only spend black mana on it, by the way, for future reference. Mortal Wound.
Green enchanted creature. When it's damaged, destroy it.
Knight of the Mists.
2 and a blue for a 2/2 flanking. When you play it, you destroy target knight unless you pay a blue mana.
Uktavi Orangutan.
2 and a green for a 2/2. Enter the battlefield, destroy target artifact.
Okay, let's get to the nasty stuff. I'm assuming
maybe
these
I ran a little better on Vintage Visions than I thought.
Dude, you are stupid. You're 12 for 12 right now.
I got to see the picture on one of them.
I said I'm counting it.
All right.
I could have not.
Yeah, that's true.
I chose to count it. Magma Mine.
1 colorless, 4 mana. Put a counter on it. I don't remember the name of the counter.
You need to know the name of the counter.
Tap, sack it, deal damage equal to the number of counters on it.
Okay, I'll accept either the flavor text or the type of counter. The flavor text is 4 letters and an exclamation point. Boom. They're all capitals. Boom. All right. Good. They're pressure counters.
Pressure, right. I knew it was something weird.
Dragon Mask.
This is 2 mana. I think it's 3 tap, target creature gets +2/+2, returns your hand in a turn.
You were right about everything except for the mana cost. It's 3, not 2. Oh. Wow, almost perfected. You have one more, though. Femaref Enchantress.
This is 1 white. I think it's an 0/2. And... Okay. Is
this our rare?
Yeah, it has some nonsense to do with enchantments. Maybe it's 1 white for a 2/2?
You are... No. So I'll give you a hint. It's a gold card.
Oh, okay.
But you were right about the nonsense with enchantments.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly.
I don't remember exactly what it does.
All right, I'm going to show you the picture then.
Oh, sure. It's a green-white for a 1/2. And it's like whenever one of your enchantments dies, you draw a card.
Yeah, that's it. That's just absurd. I can't believe you just did that. Yeah, it is like cheating showing you the picture.
Yeah, because both times I saw the pictures,
You just snapped it off, and they're both kind of weird cards too. And like you remembered it was a 1/2.
Yeah.
And like, all right, so confess, how much have you drafted this set?
Okay, I may have drafted Visions a little more than I let on.
Okay.
I was gun shy. I didn't actually think I knew it that well, but
You didn't think
maybe
you knew
a better line was like
13 out of 15.
Yeah.
And one of them I dinged you for getting the mana by 1 off, and the other one you knew once you stopped. Well, we did not stump Vargas this time, but maybe